My phone exploded with missed calls that morning. Zenobia stared at the screen in disbelief. 9 years had passed since that snowy night when I was 17, and my mother smirked, "You'll be back begging in a month." My father slammed the door in my face as I stood there with just a backpack in the bitter cold. They were so certain I'd fail without them. Instead, I built a life they could never imagine. Now they were the ones desperately trying to reach me. Ironic how things come full circle. Before I dive into my story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. Hit that like and subscribe button to join me on this journey of how abandonment became my greatest strength. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Detroit shaped more than just my accent. My parents, Diane and Frank, owned a struggling auto parts store that seemed to drain not just their finances but their capacity for kindness. Our modest 2-bedroom house was filled with tension rather than warmth, my childhood punctuated by critical comments and impossible expectations. Zenobia an A- is basically a B, and a B might as well be failing, my mother would say, snatching my report card, while simultaneously ignoring the fact that she never once helped me with homework or attended parent-teacher conferences. My father was physically present, but emotionally vacant, his attention surfacing only when I disappointed him. The Wilson's daughter got into the gifted program. "What's wrong with you?" became a common refrain, though I was actually in advanced placement classes. The facts never seemed to matter when it came to their perception of me. By middle school, I discovered my passion for computer programming quite by accident. Our school received a donation of somewhat outdated computers, and while other kids used them for games, I became fascinated with how they worked. I taught myself basic coding through library books, staying after school to practice while waiting for the city bus since my parents were always too busy to pick me up. Computers, that's for boys who can't play sports. My mother dismissed when I excitedly showed her a simple program I'd created. "Focus on something that will get you a husband someday." Mr. Abernathy, my computer science teacher, saw something different. "You have a natural talent for logical thinking, Zenobia. This could take you places." His encouragement was like water in a desert. I soaked it up and grew despite my parents' shadow. Our financial situation was a constant source of tension. The auto parts store barely stayed afloat as larger chains moved into the area. My parents' resentment seemed to grow in direct proportion to their dwindling customer base. Somehow this too became my burden to bear. "If we had a son instead, he could help with the heavy lifting at the store," my father once said within earshot, not even trying to mask his disappointment in having a daughter. When I turned 15, I got a part-time job at Greenfield Grocery stocking shelves and occasionally cashiering. My plan was simple: save every penny for college. My parents had made it clear there would be no fund waiting for me. "Since you're making money now, you need to contribute to this household," my mother announced after my first paycheck. What started as just $50 quickly became 70% of my earnings. I learnt to keep a separate bank account and told them I was making less than I actually was, squirreling away small amounts when I could. My 16th birthday passed without acknowledgement, not even a card. That same week, my parents spent hundreds of dollars on catering for a party celebrating my father's imminent promotion at his second job, a promotion that never materialized. I spent that night in my room programming a simple birthday cake animation that played a tinny version of Happy Birthday through my computer's speakers. It was the only celebration I would get. Throughout these years, I maintained excellent grades, partly out of fear and partly because academic achievement became my identity in the absence of parental approval. School was the one place where effort correlated with results, where I could control the outcome through hard work. Unlike at home, where the rules constantly shifted to ensure I could never quite measure up. By 16, I had a secret plan: excel enough to earn scholarships, graduate early if possible, and find a way out that didn't require my parents' support or permission. I just needed to survive long enough to execute it. Junior year of high school marked the beginning of the end of my family life, though I didn't know it then. I had excelled in AP computer science and mathematics, earning the highest marks in my class, despite having less support than any of my peers. My growing independence was becoming impossible to hide, and with it came a newfound resistance to my parents' control. "You need to be home by 8 to help with inventory," my mother would demand. "I can't. I have AP study group until 9. I would counter, no longer automatically acquiescing. "Those friends of yours are filling your head with nonsense about college. The store is your future," my father would insist, as though a failing business was the inheritance I should gratefully accept. Then came the catalyst that would change everything. On a Tuesday in March, I received an email that made my heart race. I had been accepted to the prestigious Tech Future summer coding camp with a full scholarship. This wasn't just any summer program, it was attended by recruiters from top universities and tech companies. Getting in was nearly impossible. Getting a scholarship was miraculous. I printed the acceptance letter, hands trembling with excitement. For once, I couldn't wait to share news with my parents. I rehearsed what I would say, anticipating their objections, but certain the scholarship aspect would win them over. No financial burden on them, surely they couldn't object to that. I waited until dinner when both were present. I have some amazing news. I began sliding the letter across our worn kitchen table. I got accepted to this coding camp for the summer. It's really prestigious, and they're giving me a full scholarship. It could help me get into a good college with financial aid. My mother barely glanced at the letter. Summer? Absolutely not. You're working full-time at the store this summer. We're short-staffed as it is. But this is a huge opportunity, I pressed. It could set me up for scholarships that would cover college completely. College? My father's voice rose. You've got delusions of grandeur, Zenobia. People like us don't waste money on college when there's a family business. A failing family business, I said before I could stop myself. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face reddened dangerously. What did you just say? My mother's voice was deadly quiet. The store is failing. Everyone knows it. I'm not throwing away my future to sink with it. The words tumbled out, years of repressed truth finally breaking free. After everything we've done for you. My mother stood up, knocking her chair backward. We've clothed you, for you given you a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us with disrespect. You've done the legal minimum required of parents. I responded, a strange calm settling over me. And you've made sure I know what a burden it was every single day. My father slammed his fist on the table dishes, jumping. That's enough. You live in this house, you follow our rules. No summer camp, no more computer nonsense. You work at the store, period. Something shifted inside me in that moment. A lifetime of bending suddenly straightened. No. What did you say? His voice dropped dangerously. I said no. I'm going to that camp. I've earned it. It's my future. Well, it's our house, my mother interjected. And in our house, you either follow our rules or you leave. Diane, my father warned, perhaps realizing she'd gone too far. No, Frank, I'm tired of her ingratitude. She thinks she's too good for us, for the life we've provided, fine. She turned to me, eyes cold. You have a choice, Zenobia. Drop this nonsense and commit to the family business, or get out. I looked between them, these two people who should have been my biggest supporters, but had always been my biggest obstacles. In that moment, I saw my entire future laid out in two diverging paths. Stay and slowly suffocate, or leave and face terrifying uncertainty. I choose to leave, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Shock registered on both their faces. They hadn't expected this. The ultimatum was supposed to force my compliance, not my exit. You have 15 minutes to pack. My mother recovered quickly. And don't think you can take anything we paid for. I rushed to my room, grabbing my school backpack and dumping out textbooks. I stuffed in essential clothes, my laptop school documents, and the emergency cash I'd hidden inside, a hollowed-out computer manual, about $600 saved from my grocery job. I changed into my warmest coat and sturdiest shoes. I left behind childhood stuffed animals, photo school awards, and the security of knowing where I would sleep that night. 15 minutes to erase 17 years. When I came downstairs, my parents stood by the front door. My mother's face was set in a smirk. You'll be back begging in a month, she said with cold certainty. No one will help you. No one cares. You'll see how the real world treats ungrateful children. My father didn't speak. He just opened the door to a light snowfall that had started while I packed. When you come crawling back, remember this was your choice, were his only words as he literally slammed the door in my face. I stood on the porch for a moment, backpack containing my entire life, watching my breath form clouds in the March evening air. Terror threatened to overwhelm me, but alongside it rose something else, determination. I would not give them the satisfaction of being right about me. Not now, not ever. I walked away from the only home I'd known, snow crunching beneath my feet, uncertain of everything, except one thing: I would never beg them for anything again. The snow fell more heavily as I walked through our neighborhood, reality setting in with each footstep. Where would I go? What would I do? The weight of homelessness pressed down heavier than my backpack. I had friends, but showing up unannounced at night would raise questions I wasn't prepared to answer. Taylor had been my best friend since freshman year. Her family lived in a small apartment about 2 miles away. Without enough money for a bus fare, I needed to save every dollar I walked through the worsening snowstorm, my thin gloves offering minimal protection against the biting cold. When I finally arrived, nearly frozen, Taylor opened the door and gasped. "Zenobia, what happened? You're practically blue." The warmth of her apartment hit me like a physical force. Her parents came to the door, concern etched on their faces as Taylor helped me remove my snow-covered coat. They kicked me out. I managed to say, the full impact finally hitting me as I spoke the words aloud. I burst into tears for the first time that night. Taylor's family was kind, but lived in a cramped two-bedroom apartment where Taylor already shared a room with her younger sister. Still, they made space for me on their couch that night, and the next and the next. Mrs. Rivera, Taylor's mother, held me as I sobbed out the whole story. "You can stay through the weekend," Mr. Rivera said gently, "but we need to find you proper help, Zenobia. You're a minor. There are resources." On Monday morning, instead of first period, Taylor walked me to Ms. Jackson's office. As the school counselor, she had always seemed nice but distant. That day, she transformed into my fiercest advocate. "This is abandonment, plain and simple," she said after hearing my story. "They can't just throw you out. There are laws." She made a flurry of calls, speaking in terse professional tones to social services. By lunchtime, I was sitting in a sterile government office explaining my situation again to a social worker named Mrs. Fernandez. "You have option," she explained. "We can try family reunification." "No," I interrupted firmly. "I can't go back there." She nodded, seeming to understand more than I said. "Then we need to look at emancipation. It's a legal process that would allow you to function as an adult despite being under 18. But it's not easy. You need to prove you can support yourself." The next weeks were a blur of paperwork, court appointments, and navigating a system not designed for someone in my situation. I was placed in a youth emergency shelter while my case was processed, a noisy institutional building where I slept in a room with 3 other girls, all with their own stories of family breakdown. Maintaining my school attendance became a logistical challenge. My morning routine at the shelter meant waking at 5 to secure bathroom time, eating a quick breakfast in the communal dining room, and catching 2 buses to reach school by first bell. I told most classmates I had moved to a different neighborhood, too ashamed to admit the truth. After school, I would go to the public library until closing time, doing homework and researching my legal options. The library became my sanctuary, warm, quiet, and full of resources. The elderly librarian, Mrs. Conti, never asked why I was there every day, but sometimes left a granola bar or apple next to my study materials when she walked by. My support network grew slowly but steadily. Mr. Abernathy offered his classroom after hours for coding practice, understanding that computer access at the shelter was limited. "Keep building your skills," he encouraged. "This is your ticket out." Ms. Jackson checked in with me daily sometimes with care packages of toiletries or school supplies. Taylor remained loyal, never treating me differently despite my circumstances. The first challenge to my independence came unexpectedly. My parents filed a truancy report claiming I had run away and was missing school. It was a transparent attempt to force my return through the system. Thanks to Ms. Jackson's meticulous documentation of my attendance and the shelter's records, we were able to counter their claims in an emergency hearing. It was the first time I'd seen my parents since that night. They sat across the courtroom, my mother tight-lipped, my father unable to meet my eyes. When asked why they had reported me truant, when I clearly wasn't, they had no answer. The judge granted my temporary emancipation petition, pending a final hearing, seeing through their manipulation. That small victory gave me courage. With Ms. Jackson's help, I secured a part-time position at the community centre's IT help desk, 15 hours a week at minimum wage. It wasn't much, but it was income I could document for my emancipation case. 1 month after being kicked out, the exact time frame, my mother had predicted I would return. Begging, I sat on a bench in the park eating a sandwich from the community centre's free lunch program. I realised with a start that not once had I considered going back. Despite everything, the shelter's uncomfortable beds, the long bus rides, the constant paperwork, the freedom from their criticism and control was worth every hardship. My housing situation improved unexpectedly through Mr. Abernathy's church network. Mrs. Winters, an 82-year-old widow, needed help with basic technology and home maintenance in exchange for reduced rent on a tiny room in her historic home. We met for coffee, and her straightforward manner immediately put me at ease. "I don't need much," she said. Help me figure out my emails, change some light bulbs, and shovel the walk in winter. You get a room with privacy and kitchen privileges. No drugs, no parties, reasonable hours. Deal. It was the first stroke of real luck I'd had. My own door that locked a window with morning sun and an address I could use for official paperwork. Mrs. Winters never treated me like a charity case, but rather as a fair exchange of services. My dignity remained intact, something the shelter couldn't offer. With stable housing secured, I focused on completing junior year with the highest possible grades. Despite everything, or perhaps because of it, I finished with a 4.0 GPA. Every A felt like a direct rebuttal to my parents' prediction of my failure. When summer arrived, the coding camp that had triggered my ejection from home became my salvation. The Tech Future Summer Coding Camp was held at Michigan Tech University, a 3-hour bus ride from Detroit. Housing was provided in dormitories, the first time I'd ever had a space that felt designed for someone my age. Welcome to Tech Future. The program director, Alicia Hayes, greeted our cohort of 30 students from across the Midwest. Over the next 8 weeks, you'll be challenged, frustrated, and ultimately transformed by what you learn here. She wasn't exaggerating. The program was intense 8-hour days of coding workshops and collaborative projects. But for the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who didn't think my passion for programming was strange or unwomanly. Your algorithm solution was elegant. Marcus, one of the instructors, commented after I debugged a particularly tricky problem. You have a natural talent for seeing patterns. These casual affirmations were like rain on parched soil. I worked harder than I ever had, often staying in the lab until midnight, pushing myself beyond the curriculum. For our final project, we were challenged to create an application that solved a real-world problem. I developed a resource-matching app that connected homeless youth with local services, something I intimately understood the need for. The user interface was simple: enter your location and immediate needs, food, shelter, healthcare, education, and the app would display available resources, hours, requirements, and real-time capacity. When it came time to present to the panel of judges, including representatives from major tech companies, I spoke from personal experience without revealing my situation. Access to information can be the difference between a night on the streets or a night in safety. I explained, demonstrating how the app worked even without internet connection, a crucial feature for users without reliable data plans. My project won the camp competition. The prize was modest, a new laptop and a mentorship opportunity with Alicia Hayes, but the real reward was the confidence it instilled. For the first time, I could envision a future built on my talents, rather than defined by my family's limitations. You have something special, Zenobia, Alicia told me as camp concluded. I'd like to continue mentoring you through your senior year and college applications. Students like you are exactly why this program exists. I returned to Detroit transformed. Senior year loomed ahead, but now I had direction, support, and most importantly, belief in myself. My routine with Mrs. Winters continued smoothly. I helped her learn to video chat with her grandchildren in Arizona, and in return she occasionally left homemade soup or fresh bread outside my door. We respected each other's privacy while providing companionship neither of us had expected. School took on new meaning with college applications on the horizon. Without parents to guide me through the process, I relied heavily on the school's College Resource Center, Ms. Jackson helped me secure fee waivers for applications and connected me with scholarship opportunities specifically for independent students. You're what these programs are designed for, she encouraged. Don't be shy about telling your story. Writing personal statements forced me to confront the narrative of my life thus far. I chose to frame my experience not as victimhood, but as early independence that fostered resilience and problem-solving skills, qualities any university would value. In October, while picking up groceries at my old workplace, where I still maintained weekend shifts, I literally bumped carts with my mother in the produce section. It was our first encounter since the courtroom. She looked older somehow, the lines around her mouth deeper. For a moment, naked surprise registered on her face before her features rearranged into familiar disdain. "So you're still in Detroit," she said, as though disappointed I hadn't disappeared completely. "I am," I replied, maintaining eye contact. She glanced at my cart, simple staples, and a splurge of fresh berries, then at my appearance. I was neatly dressed for my shift hair, pulled back name tag in place. "Your father's back is giving him trouble. We could use help at the store." She offered the closest thing to an olive branch she could manage. "You could move back, save on rent?" The conditional nature of the offer wasn't lost on me. I was only welcome if I provided utility. I'm doing well where I am, I said simply. I graduate in the spring and I'm applying to colleges. I hope Dad feels better soon. I pushed my cart past her heart pounding but head high. In that brief exchange, the power dynamic had shifted perceptibly. I was no longer the desperate daughter. I was a young adult making my own way. Graduation day arrived with all the pomp the public school system could muster. I had no family in the audience, but the seats weren't empty. Mrs. Winters came dressed in her Sunday best alongside Mr. Abernathy, Ms. Jackson, and Taylor's entire family. When my name was called as valedictorian, their cheers were the loudest in the auditorium. My speech didn't mention my circumstances directly, but its message was clear. The challenges that seem designed to break us often build us instead. It's not the absence of struggle, but how we respond to it that defines our character. Afterward, Mrs. Winters pressed a small gift box into my hands. Inside was a delicate silver compass pendant. "To remind you that you always know which way is forward," she said, eyes misting. As my final act before leaving for college, I decided to visit my parents' house. Not to return, but to close that chapter properly on my terms. I chose a Sunday afternoon when I knew they'd be home, my acceptance letter to State University with full scholarship in hand, proof of everything they said I couldn't achieve. I knocked on the familiar door, heart racing but resolved. My father's silhouette appeared through the frosted glass. When he saw me, he hesitated, then turned away without opening the door. "We have nothing to say to you," my mother's voice called from inside. "You made your choice." I stood there a moment longer, letter in hand, realizing no validation from them would ever fill the space they'd created. Their approval so long sought no longer mattered. "I did make my choice," I said to the closed door, "and it was the right one." I left the letter in the mailbox, not for their approval, but as my final statement. I was leaving Detroit with 2 suitcases, a full scholarship, and a future entirely of my own making. On the bus to State University that August, watching Detroit's skyline recede in the distance, I felt both grief and liberation in equal measure. I had lost my family, but found myself. The trade, painful as it was, would prove worth it in ways I couldn't yet imagine. State University's sprawling campus felt like another world after Detroit's concrete landscape. Move-in day found me navigating dormitory hallways filled with families unloading SUVs, packed with dorm supplies, parents hugging teary-eyed freshman siblings carrying mini fridges and laptops. I arrived alone with my 2 suitcases, having taken the Greyhound to the college town. No tearful goodbyes, no family photos on the dormitory steps, no parents to help arrange my side of the room. The contrast between my arrival and my peers was stark and unavoidable. "Is your family coming later?" asked my roommate Jade as she hung fairy lights above her desk, her parents busy assembling a bookshelf nearby. "No, it's just me," I answered, unpacking my modest belongings. The scholarship covered books and tuition, but provided only basic living expenses. My bed had standard issue sheets, while Jade's featured a coordinated comforter set with matching pillows. Jade's mother, noticing the disparity, invited me to join them for dinner off campus. "We always celebrate move-in day with a big meal," she insisted warmly. Their kindness was genuine, but highlighted everything I lacked. That night, after Jade fell asleep, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if other students could sense the difference in me, the girl without parents, the one who had been deemed disposable. I promised myself that by graduation, no one would see me that way. They would see only my accomplishments, not my abandonment. Academically, I thrived from the start. The computer science program was challenging, but compared to balancing high school with homelessness, managing coursework in a stable environment felt almost luxurious. For the first time, I had reliable internet 24-hour access to computer labs and professors who held regular office hours. "Your programming fundamentals are unusually strong for a freshman," my introduction to algorithms professor commented after reviewing my first project. "Where did you learn this level of code optimization?" "Self-taught mostly," I replied, "and a summer coding camp." "Well, keep it up. Students with your foundation often excel in our most advanced courses." These interactions, small as they were, reinforced that I belonged in this academic environment despite my unconventional path. Socially, I moved more cautiously. Jade became my first college friend almost by default, our proximity as roommates breaking through my initial reserve. Her easygoing nature and genuine interest in others drew people to our room, gradually expanding my circle. "You never talk about your family," she observed one night as we studied. "Is everything okay there?" I considered deflecting as I usually did, but decided on a partial truth. "We're estranged." It's been that way since high school. Go. To my surprise, she didn't press for details or offer platitudes about reconciliation. She simply nodded. That must be tough during breaks. You're welcome at my house anytime, no questions asked. Her response acceptance without judgment made her the first person at college I truly trusted. My financial situation remained precarious despite the scholarship. While tuition and basic housing were covered, everything else required careful budgeting. I found work-study employment at the university IT help desk, 20 hours a week, troubleshooting faculty and student technical issues. The first winter break highlighted the reality of my situation. As students packed to return home for the holidays, the dormitory gradually emptied. I was among the handful who remained our presence, a silent acknowledgement of complicated family situations. The campus during break was eerily quiet, most buildings operating on reduced hours. I volunteered for extra help desk shifts, grateful for both the income and the distraction from the empty residence hall. On Christmas Day, I received an unexpected invitation from Marcus Williams, my former instructor from the coding camp, who now worked for a tech startup called Digital Front in the same college town. "No one should eat dining hall food on Christmas," he texted. "My wife makes enough food for an army. No pressure, but our door is open." That dinner with Marcus, his wife Anna, and their toddler daughter became the first holiday in years where I felt genuinely welcome. When completing emergency contact forms for the university, I listed Marcus and Ms. Jackson from my high school surrogate family members who had proven more reliable than blood. By sophomore year, I had settled into a rhythm at State University. My grades placed me at the top of the computer science cohort, and professors began recommending me for research opportunities. I joined the Women in Computing Club, finding community among others, navigating a male-dominated field. It was during this year that I finally addressed the psychological impact of my abandonment. After a panic attack triggered by a routine financial aid verification that required parental information, I reluctantly visited the University Counselling Centre. Dr. Payton, a psychologist specialising in trauma, helped me understand that my experiences had left deeper marks than I realised. "What happened to you was parental abandonment," she explained in our sessions. "It's a form of trauma that often manifests in high-functioning overachievement, coupled with difficulty forming close relationships. Does that sound familiar?" It did. Despite my academic success and growing friend circle, I kept everyone at a safe emotional distance. Dr. Payton helped me recognize patterns I developed for self-protection, perfectionism, independence, to the point of isolation, difficulty accepting help. "Your parents taught you that love is conditional and can be withdrawn at any moment," she observed. "Unlearning that will take time and practice." These weekly sessions became crucial to my healing. Slowly, I began to share more of my story with trusted friends, discovering that vulnerability didn't lead to rejection as I'd feared. Junior year brought a breakthrough moment when I developed an innovative data security application for my advanced programming course. The project caught the attention of industry representatives visiting campus for the annual tech fair. "This approach to encryption is genuinely novel," commented a recruiter from Secure Systems Inc. "Would you be interested in a summer internship in San Francisco? We could use thinking like yours." The offer included housing stipend and competitive pay, an opportunity beyond anything I'd imagined possible at this stage. I accepted immediately, recognizing this as my chance to step into the tech world I'd been preparing for. That summer in San Francisco expanded my horizons beyond academics. Living in corporate housing with other interns from across the country, I experienced a city vibrant with innovation. For 10 weeks, I worked alongside industry professionals, my ideas taken seriously despite my age and student status. "Your background gives you a different perspective," my supervisor noted during my performance review. "You solve problems laterally when others are stuck in vertical thinking. That's rare and valuable." I returned to campus for senior year with job offers already in hand, my future taking shape well before graduation. The final semesters were a blur of advanced coursework, job interviews, and decisions about where to begin my career. When commencement arrived, I stood to receive my degree with highest honors. The announcement of summa cum laude following my name echoed through the auditorium, the Latin phrase officially recognizing what I had known all along: I was capable of excellence, regardless of where I came from. I had sent graduation announcements to my parents' address, not expecting attendance, but offering the information as a final olive branch. The seats I'd reserved remained empty as I'd anticipated. Yet the absence no longer defined the day. My chosen family, Jade and her parents, Mrs. Winters, who had travelled despite her arthritis, Marcus and his family and friends from various chapters of my journey filled an entire row, their presence more meaningful than any biological connection. With my degree and multiple job offers, I made the decision to accept a position at Innovate Tech, a growing company in San Francisco that offered creative freedom and growth potential over slightly higher salaries from more established firms. Within weeks of graduation, I packed my belongings considerably more than the 2 suitcases I'd arrived with and boarded a plane to California ready to begin the next chapter. As the plane lifted off, I realized I was leaving behind not just a state, but a version of myself, the abandoned daughter, the homeless teen, the scholarship student, always slightly out of place. Ahead lay the opportunity to define myself solely by what I created rather than what I had survived. San Francisco's fog-draped hills and colorful Victorian buildings became the backdrop for my new beginning. The tech industry was booming with startups and established companies competing for talent. As a new developer at Innovate Tech, I entered a world where ideas mattered more than background or connections. My first apartment was a tiny studio in the Mission District, expensive, despite its size, but mine alone, no roommates, no compromises, a space entirely under my control. I decorated minimally but intentionally, a good desk, a comfortable bed, and my first real art purchase, an abstract painting in blues and silvers that reminded me of Mrs. Winter's compass pendant, which I still wore daily. Imposter syndrome hit hard during those initial months. Despite my qualifications, I found myself working alongside graduates from MIT, Stanford, and Carnegie Mellon, many from privileged backgrounds with industry connections through parents or family friends. "Did you see the new project requirements?" asked Tanner, a colleague, who seemed to navigate workplace politics effortlessly. "My dad's golf buddy is on the executive team. He says they're really looking for innovative security solutions." These casual references to family advantages were constant reminders of what I lacked. Rather than revealing my background, I channeled the insecurity into work, arriving earlier and staying later than required, triple-checking my code and volunteering for challenging projects others avoided. 6 months into my role, this approach paid off when I identified a critical security vulnerability in the company's flagship product. Instead of simply reporting it, I developed a solution and presented both to my team lead. "This is impressive work, Zenobia," she said, reviewing my code. "Most new hires would have just flagged the issue. You took initiative and ownership." That moment marked a turning point in how I was perceived. No longer just the quiet new developer, I became known for thorough problem-solving and security expertise. My background or lack of one became irrelevant compared to what I contributed. Outside work, I slowly built a personal life in my new city. Making friends as an adult proved different from college, requiring intentional effort rather than proximity. I joined a weekly rock climbing group and a coding workshop for underprivileged teens, finding community through shared interests rather than shared history. 2 years into my San Francisco life, I met Alex at a tech conference where we both presented sessions, mine on security protocols, his on marketing analytics. Our initial conversation about data visualization sparked an intellectual connection that gradually evolved into something deeper. "You approach problems differently than anyone I've met," he said during our third date, a hike in the Marin Headlands with the Golden Gate Bridge visible through the fog. "There's no template to your thinking." Alex's observation touched on something fundamental about me. My solutions came from necessity and innovation rather than established patterns. When he asked about my family months later, I found myself sharing parts of my story I usually kept private. "They kicked me out at 17, I explained, as we sat on my small balcony, city lights glimmering below. "I haven't had contact with them since college." "That must have been incredibly difficult," he said, not with pity but with genuine understanding. "How did you manage?" The question wasn't about survival, but about the emotional journey. No one had asked me that before. As I shared more details, Alex listened without trying to fix or minimize my experience. His response, present, attentive, accepting, made space for a vulnerability I rarely allowed myself. Our relationship developed slowly, built on mutual respect and shared values. Alex's family, warm, functional, occasionally overwhelming, welcomed me without reservation, though holiday gatherings sometimes highlighted the absence in my own life. "You're always welcome here, but I also understand if it's too much sometimes," his mother said perceptively during my second Thanksgiving with them. "Family can be complicated even when it's good." Her acknowledgement of this complexity was a gift permission to feel both grateful and conflicted about being grafted into someone else's family tree. My career continued its upward trajectory. At 24, I developed an encryption algorithm that significantly improved data protection for mobile applications. The innovation earned industry recognition and led to speaking engagements at major tech conferences. Rising star in cybersecurity, read the headline of a profile in Tech Innovator magazine. The article detailed my professional accomplishments and approach to security challenges, with no mention of my personal background exactly as I preferred. With financial stability established, I purchased my first home at 25, a modern one-bedroom condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The day I signed the mortgage papers, I sat alone in the empty space, remembering the shelter's communal rooms and Mrs. Winter's spare bedroom. The journey from homelessness to home ownership in 8 years seemed almost unbelievable. That milestone prompted me to seek deeper therapeutic work. Despite my external success, I still struggled with fully trusting relationships and accepting that stability wouldn't suddenly vanish. "You've built an impressive life," my new therapist, Dr. Mehra, observed. "But there's still a part of you waiting for everything to collapse, isn't there?" She helped me understand that my parents' rejection wasn't about my worth, but their limitations. "Some people can only give what they themselves received," she explained. "Their inability to support you reflects their deficits, not yours." This perspective shift allowed me to see my family history with more compassion without excusing the harm done. I realized I could be open to reconciliation while not actively seeking it or needing it for my own wholeness. With this new understanding, I took a small step toward connection by finding my father's sister, Aunt Carla, through social media. Our cautious exchange of messages revealed that my parents had told the extended family I had run away and cut contact, painting themselves as the abandoned rather than the abandoners. "Your cousin Julia is studying computer science in college," Aunt Carla wrote. "She always looked up to you as a kid. Would you be open to connecting with her?" This thread of family, not my parents, but the wider circle, offered a gentle way to reclaim parts of my history without reopening direct wounds. Julia and I began a correspondence about programming and college life that evolved into a genuine connection. After 3 years together, Alex and I became engaged during a weekend trip to Big Sur. As we discussed our future, the question of my parents inevitably arose. "Would you want to try contacting them before the wedding?" he asked carefully. "Not for their sake, but for closure if you want it." After consideration, I composed a brief factual email to my parents' old address, unsure if they still used it. The message simply provided my current contact information with a single sentence: "I'm open to healthy communication if you ever wish to reach out." I attached no expectations to this small opening, protecting myself from potential disappointment. No response came. Life continued its forward momentum, wedding planning, career advancement. The steady construction of a life I had designed rather than inherited. The absence of response confirmed what I already knew reconciliation required: willingness from both sides. Yet I had extended the invitation on my terms. That alone represented healing, the ability to offer connection without needing it to acknowledge the past, without being defined by it. Whatever came next would be approached from a position of strength rather than longing. The morning that changed everything began ordinarily enough. I was preparing for a presentation at a security conference, reviewing slides while sipping coffee in my home office, when my phone began vibrating continuously with notification after notification. At first, I assumed it was a system alert from work, perhaps a security breach requiring immediate attention. Instead, I found 17 missed calls from an unknown number with my hometown area code, along with a flood of text messages and voicemails. The first voicemail stopped me cold. "Zenobia, it's your mother. Please call us back. It's urgent." Her voice sounded strained, almost unrecognizable, a far cry from the coldly confident tone that had predicted my failure 9 years earlier. The text escalated in urgency. "We need to speak with you. Please call us back. This is your father. It's important." "Zenobia, we know you're there." I set the phone down, hands trembling slightly. 9 years of silence broken by this sudden desperation. Why now? What could possibly be so urgent? After all this time, I called Dr. Mehra, needing perspective before responding. "This is exactly the situation we've discussed," she reminded me. "You have the tools to engage without being engulfed. Whatever their emergency, it doesn't override your boundaries." Her words steadied me. I decided to let the calls continue unanswered while I investigated what might have prompted this sudden outreach. A quick online search revealed the Catalyst Tech Innovator's latest issue had just been released, with my feature article prominently displayed. The profile included photos of me in my San Francisco office and home, highlighting my role as the youngest senior security architect at Innovate Tech and mentioning my recent industry awards. The timing was unmistakable. After years of silence, my parents had suddenly discovered urgent reasons to contact me immediately following public recognition of my success. For 2 weeks, I let the calls go to voicemail, creating space to process my feelings and prepare for whatever conversation might follow. Each message revealed a little more desperation, a little less dignity. My mother's voice grew tearful, my father's uncharacteristically humble. Alex supported my deliberate pace. "You don't owe them an immediate response," he reminded me, or any response at all. When I finally decided to answer, I set clear parameters, a specific time, a 30-minute limit, and Alex nearby for support. I would hear them out but protect the life and boundaries I'd established. When the call connected, the silence lasted several seconds before my mother spoke. "Zenobia, is that you?" "Yes, it's me." I kept my voice neutral, professional. "Thank God. We've been trying to reach you for weeks." The relief in her voice seemed genuine, but I remained cautious. "I saw that. What's so urgent after 9 years of no contact?" Another pause. I could hear my father's breathing in the background. "We've had some difficulties," my mother finally continued. "The store finally closed last year. We lost the house." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, meaning it despite everything. "Your father had a heart attack in January," she added. "The medical bills, we've exhausted our options." The unspoken request hung in the air between us. 9 years of silence broken not by apology or reconciliation attempts, but by financial need. "I see," I said carefully. "And you're reaching out now because—" "We saw the magazine," my father interjected, his voice raspier than I remembered. "You've done well for yourself, better than we expected." The backhanded compliment was so characteristic I almost laughed. Even in asking for help, they couldn't offer straightforward pride. "We're your parents, Zenobia," my mother added, as though that fact alone constituted a claim. "Family helps family. Does family kick out 17-year-olds in snowstorms?" I asked the question, emerging before I could moderate it. "Does family predict failure and slam doors?" Silence again. "I understand you're in a difficult situation," I continued more calmly, "and I'm willing to consider helping with medical expenses, but I need something first." "What's that?" My father sounded wary. Acknowledgement of what happened. Not excuses, not justifications. Recognition of the harm done. My mother's defensive tone returned immediately. We did our best with a difficult teenager. "If you'd just followed our rules." "This conversation is over," I interrupted. "When you're ready to take responsibility, we can talk again." "Wait." My father's voice cracked. "Please, we need help. The house is in foreclosure. We're staying with your cousin temporarily." I took a deep breath. "I'll consider helping with verified medical expenses, but any assistance comes with conditions. First, family therapy. Second, boundaries I establish will be respected. Third, no financial support without accountability for how it's used. Therapy," my mother sounded affronted. "We don't need—" "Those are my terms, I stated firmly. "You didn't want me when I needed you. You only want what I can give you now. That's not a relationship, it's a transaction. If you want any kind of relationship moving forward, we start with honesty." After more resistance and negotiation, they reluctantly agreed to my conditions. We scheduled a video call with a family therapist for the following week, the first step in what would be a lengthy, difficult process. When I ended the call, Alex embraced me wordlessly. We both knew this wasn't a heartwarming reconciliation story. It was the beginning of a complicated renegotiation of boundaries with people who had proven themselves untrustworthy. The first therapy session was as difficult as expected. Conducted over video with Dr. Landon, a specialist in family estrangement, it quickly revealed how differently we perceived the past. "You were always stubborn and ungrateful." My mother began falling into familiar patterns of blame. "Diana," Dr. Landon interrupted gently, "we're here to understand Zenobia's experience, not defend past actions. Can you listen without responding for a few minutes?" When given uninterrupted space to speak, I described the night of my ejection and the years of emotional neglect preceding it. My father stared at his hands while my mother's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and something approaching shame. "That's not how it happened," she insisted when I finished. "It's how I experienced it," I countered. And regardless of intent, the outcome was a homeless 17-year-old. Dr. Landon guided us through this impasse, skillfully establishing basic ground rules for future sessions and assigning individual reflection work before our next meeting. True to my word, I arranged payment for my father's medical expenses directly to the hospital while declining to address their housing situation immediately. Medical care is a need, I explained. Your housing choices will require a longer discussion about sustainable solutions. Over the following months, a fragile tentative connection formed, not the parent-child relationship of the past, but something new. Weekly therapy sessions gradually revealed the generational patterns of emotional neglect my parents had themselves experienced, contextualizing, but not excusing their treatment of me. My father never once told me I did anything right. My father admitted in our third session, voice barely audible, "I guess I didn't know how to give what I never got." These moments of vulnerability were rare but significant. My mother struggled more with accountability, often retreating to defensiveness when confronted with the impact of her actions. Yet even she occasionally showed glimmers of genuine regret. "I was jealous of you," she confessed during a breakthrough session 6 months into therapy. "Your intelligence, your confidence. I felt threatened by the opportunities you had that I never did." As our wedding approached, Alex and I discussed whether to include my parents in any capacity. "It's entirely your decision," he assured me. "No one would blame you for keeping that boundary firm." After careful consideration and consultation with Dr. Landon, I decided to invite them with specific limitations, not as traditional parents of the bride, but as guests who would need to respect the celebration we had planned. "I'll be walking myself down the aisle," I informed them directly, "and we won't be doing parent dances or traditional family photos. If you can attend within these parameters, you're welcome to witness this day." To my surprise, they accepted these terms without argument, perhaps recognizing the privilege of inclusion after years of estrangement. On my wedding day, seeing my parents seated quietly in the middle rows, not in the front reserved for immediate family, produced a complex emotion I couldn't immediately name. Not quite happiness, not quite forgiveness, but perhaps acknowledgement. They had come on my terms, respecting boundaries they once would have trampled. During the reception, my father approached alone while Alex was talking with friends. "Your speech was impressive," he said awkwardly. "You always did have a way with words." "Thank you," I replied, the simple exchange feeling monumental in its normalcy. "I know we're not what we should have been," he continued haltingly, "but I'm proud of the woman you've become, despite us not because of us." It was perhaps the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. I nodded, accepting the statement for what it was, not a complete healing, but a step toward recognition. By my 30th birthday, celebrated with a small gathering of close friends and Alex in our San Francisco home, my relationship with my parents had evolved into something I could never have predicted. Not close, not traditionally warm, but defined by clear boundaries and occasional moments of genuine connection. They remained in Detroit, rebuilding their lives on a modest scale after the financial collapse. Our contact was limited to monthly video calls and occasional text exchanges. The past wasn't erased, but it no longer dominated every interaction. Perhaps the most meaningful development came from this hard-won perspective. I established the Future Forward Fund, a scholarship program for teens experiencing homelessness or family estrangement. The initiative provided not just financial support, but mentorship and housing assistance, all the things I had cobbled together through luck and determination. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in proving others wrong. I told the first cohort of scholarship recipients at our inaugural gathering, "It's in creating a life so full that their absence becomes merely a footnote in your story." The wound of abandonment would always be part of my history, but it no longer defined my future. The scared 17-year-old with a backpack in the snow had become a woman who had built her own definition of home success and family, one chosen deliberately rather than determined by birth. My parents had been wrong about many things, but most importantly about this: sometimes walking away isn't failure, but the first step toward becoming who you were meant to be all along. What about you? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between what others expected and what you knew was right for you? Comment below with your experience. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that. Sometimes the path forward requires leaving something behind. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and remember, your worth isn't determined by those who failed to see it.